Welcome to Table Talk here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest-running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world, 12 years strong. We got a great Table Talk interview show coming your way this week. We're going to be diving into this Philadelphia Flyers team. The season is almost upon us, but we've recently had development camp. Preseason is here, and we got a great guest this week from BroadStreetHockey.com. I'm a subscriber over there, and we love talking to the folks over there. We've got Thomas, who is joining us. Thomas, thank you so much for jumping on. Thomas Williams, folks. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I've seen your show before when Kelly's come on and other people and other folks from Broad Street Hockey. So I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you, man. It really is. Look, I am so excited for this Flyers season to start. Whether it's talking to Kelly, our friend, mutual friend Ryan Gilbert as well, other folks who've come on this podcast to talk about the Flyers, the plan in place as Danny Briere has set this foundation now seems to really be coming to fruition in different ways. Now, is this going to be a cup contender anytime soon? No, but it's going to be interesting to see the fruits of Danny Briere's labor really manifesting itself throughout this season. And he just recently made a move this past week here. So I want to start off with big news here in Flyers Nation, talking about the trade of Ivan Fedotov to the Blue Jackets. I mean, personally, Thomas, I'm glad they cleaned up the depth at the goalie position before the start of this season. I mean, when you look at Fedotov, dear Lord, he had a horrible .880 save percentage and a 3.15 goals against average in 26 games last season. I'm surprised anybody took him on, quite frankly. But look, I'm glad he's moving on, given the situation at the goalie position. But also, this affects the Flyer salary cap situation. And you wrote a really good piece over on BroadStreetHockey.com specifically about this. I'm hoping you can kind of get into that piece. Can you get into how Ivan Fedotov being traded really affects the Flyers' finances in the future?
Yeah, so I think you using the term like cleaned up, it helps for the roster as well. And just like, especially before training camp, you don't want Fedotov coming in and fighting for a role that he doesn't really have, because Dan Vladar was signed. You would be mistaking if you'd be lying to him in his face, be like, yeah, you could win this backup job. No, you can't really. So it gives him an opportunity somewhere else. But when it comes to the cap, so right now, Puckpedia, which is a great resource, obviously, that we've kind of been using since Cap Friendly has gone away, has the Flyers right now at $2.695 million. So with that in place, and then it has Alex Bump moving up, that's like a presumption, and like just to fill out the 23 man. Obviously, rosters will be finalized after training camp and everything like that.
Right.
But how this affects the majority of the cap is the big theme last year was that the Flyers didn't want to go and use LTIR, this long-term injured reserve. Basically allows teams to go above the salary cap by a certain amount of that player's salary. But it doesn't it's not free cap space. You would have to actually reach that limit, and then it lets you go above that. So obviously the big use of that would be Ryan Ellis, who's probably not playing professional hockey again. 6.25 million of that would allow them to go into that. But then the problem with doing that and going to LTIR, and this is like a lot of numbers and starting off the show, just like diving into basically like
we got to do it.
An accountant and I'm managing bookkeeping. But the reason you don't want to do that is because Matvei Michkov, if he hits all of his scheduled bonuses, because ELC's entry level contracts have bonuses on them and performance bonuses, and I think some of them are like finished top 10 in NHL scoring stuff. Some of it's lofty, but definitely doable if Matvei Michkov is suddenly like a 100-point guy, like in a couple of years. The Flyers don't want to do that. So with Michkov still on his ALC, I think a total of bonuses would mean 3.3 million is added to this Flyers cap. And because it's after the season, you couldn't just like add it to, oh, that was last year, unless you actually had that space. So with the Flyers trading Fedotov and his entire contract and not having salary retained, now if Matvei Michkov hits all of his bonuses, there'd be minimal damage for next season. Because if Fedotov was still on this roster and the Flyers were under the salary cap, but just by a couple $100,000, then suddenly you're seeing 3 million and change on next year's cap, which apparently in next summer, according to Danny Briere and Keith Jones, is the summer that they want to be active in free agency trades, kind of actually potentially use that money available to them in a competitive way, then you would get into a mess and be like, that's $3 million because a dude that, like, was really good last
Yeah,
year, and it's just like a waste spot. So trading for Fedotov, you get rid of that potential outcome, at least a little bit. And then the other point would just be general financial flexibility is always good. Always having more
absolutely.
money available to them and in trades, or I think the deadline cap space is somewhere, if it stays the same contract or the same cap space, it's like over $12 million. So at the trade deadline upcoming up in March, you could take on $12 million worth of cap or $12 million worth of player if like some team wants to shed their salary to make a deal work, and then you get a second round pick for it or something like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I got to say, I'm still continuing to be impressed with the moves that Danny Briere is making in terms of positioning this organization and this team for the long term. I mean, that is the end of the at the end of the day, that is the end of the game. The long term here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about band-aids, the short-term game plan. It's the long term here. And I think we got to really keep that in mind. But talking about the goalie position, yes, Fedotov being traded. As we look at the goalie situation this year for the Flyers, I mean, it seems pretty obvious now and apparent that Sam Ersson and Dan Vladar, they're going to be the two goalies for the Flyers. And I wasn't necessarily a fan, Thomas, of how many games Ersson played last season and his like overall workload, but I understood what the coaching staff felt that they had to do last season. I'm wondering how much we will see of Vladar this season. I mean, Dan Vladar, I mean, not a horrible goalie by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just wondering what are your thoughts on the goalie situation, the balance we may see with that, how much Ersson should be playing in front of the net throughout the year. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Ersson's going to be the starter for game one,
Yeah,
but it would be kind of this role of we'll see how it goes, and like every couple games, kind of do a check in and ride the hot hand, and then we'll see how the season ends. But I think there will be a mentality in the back of their heads. They're just like, we have to manage Ersson's game time, because the consistent theme so far has been the more he's played, the worse he's been. And you saw it when he had to take the total number one spot after last January 2023, I think, 24 actually. But yeah, you saw just the more he played, worse he got. So I think it'd be at the top of their minds, but at the same time, they want to give him enough leash to not be like restricted and be like, oh, you can only play 40 games this season and 42 goes to Vladar. Like, I don't know if they have that set out as a plan, but I could see them seeing how it all comes into out of the wash and just like approaching the season as Ersson's slightly above, but you're not expecting, like, it's almost like a 55-45 percentage, but then that could totally change.
Yeah. I feel like there needs to be, and like this is the one area I was just talking about, the long-term vision of Danny Briere, him setting the foundation for the future. I feel that this is the one area of the team where we don't necessarily have that yet at this point. I mean, I would think you are seeing this as well. And I'm wondering if, part of what is going to happen during free agency next season might be that goalie of the future. So I don't know. What are your thoughts here with regard to that?
Yeah, they have a couple really interesting prospects in Igor Zavragin and Carson Bjarnason, but it's still got like Zavragin's in the Russia for the next 2 years. Bjarnason is making his pro debut this season. So it's like, they're good prospects, but again, prospects, as we know as sports fans, don't always pan out. You could look at prospect rankings 10 years ago and be like, that top 10 is insane. Like half of those guys aren't even playing hockey anymore. So like it's prospects are prospects at the end of the day. But yeah, I think if they're going to be patient with this, with the position, of course, because I think Ersson's only 25-ish. He's 25, and then Vladar's only 28. They're keeping it as like a long-term, like there is more room for especially Ersson to grow. And like you've seen Logan Thompson hit his stride in Washington at 27, 28 years old. Like there's that age that you kind of know what you know in goalies. And Ersson's had a kind of a stop and start so far. So I think a lot of it is a wait and see, but at the end of the day, I think that is the one position where we're kind of scarred in Philadelphia of like, we need to figure this out as soon as possible. Once we like, oh, if Zegras hits as a center, if like Martone and Michkov are like excellent wingers, if we have this like crazy good, like we could get some blue line with Oliver Bonk and Spencer Gill, and like we're forming this wonderful team, and then the goaltending position is just like nothing.
Yeah.
We don't want to go into like a Michael Leighton situation again. So
right. That's a good.
So yeah, I think that's going to be like at the top of their mind. So if like in 2 years you're not seeing that progress, then they might be like, okay, we need to hit that button and like get that 30-year-old, do like what Florida did with signing Bobrovsky, and that's a hard name to hear, but
it is.
Do that. Like we'll overpay for this guy just to have some just solidify the position.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, as we're moving along with the conversation here, rookie camp has started for the Flyers, and us fans, I mean, we're going to be watching more than a few players and following a number of storylines here. The first for me, Thomas, that I'm going to really be looking at is how Jack Nesbitt works on his skating, since it was the biggest knock on him after being drafted. I'm really interested to see what he's going to be doing throughout this preseason. What are you going to be looking at in terms of Jack Nesbitt during the course of this preseason here?
Yeah, I think like you said, like already a lot of it will be his skating. I did see an improvement from what I saw of the rookie games compared to Windsor last year. I was watching a lot of Windsor games, just like really interested in a couple prospects there. But yeah, I think his skating, I didn't see a lot of what I had an issue with last season when I was looking forward to the draft, of like that kind of quick, chunky feet, almost like you're kind of like, it's almost like, those little dogs when you're walking around and it's this tiny little dog and then the legs are going like crazy. That's how Nesbitt skated in Windsor a little bit. So I think this past week you got to see like a little bit more strides and length and stuff like that. So I've seen an improvement, but I think this so far in training camp, I'll be looking out for if he can overcome some of his skating, of course, and really tap into a lot of his high hockey IQ, get that offensive awareness that is primarily the reason he was drafted so high at 12th overall, and teams covered him at the center position, and maybe even use his size, like how he was able to bully a little bit of the rookies and prospects and everything like that. But how is he going up against a Nick Seeler on defense? How is he how is he battling against Travis Sanheim with that reach and everything like that? It's going to be really interesting to see him against grown full-time NHLers for sure.
Absolutely. Again, folks, we're talking to Thomas Williams from BroadStreetHockey.com. Head on over to BroadStreetHockey.com. Always fantastic content. We've been having folks from BroadStreetHockey.com on this podcast platform for years and years. And Thomas, tell everybody where they can find you on the interwebs out there if they want to connect with you and read your stuff. Let everybody know.
I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Sludge Williams. And always read BroadStreetHockey.com. I'm always writing there almost every single day doing something. We have amazing content, amazing writers over there. I'm just happy to get the season started and everything going on over there.
Awesome. Yes. And if you are new to watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe to the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show, and you can certainly just search online the Philadelphia Sports Table. You can like our social media sites. We are out there, of course, on the Twitter/X at Philadelphia PST. Again, just search out the Philadelphia Sports Table and you're going to find us, whether it's on Facebook, whether you're on Instagram. Eric and I are on Blue Sky. You can search me out there. We're also on Threads. I'm over on TikTok at Mr. Jeff Warren. And we're going to be taking a break right now. But when we get back, we got a ton more Flyers talk as we're heading into this preseason. Stick with us. All right, we are back, and we are here with our good friend Thomas Williams from BroadStreetHockey.com. Thomas, I want to talk about Jett Luchanko. Jett Luchanko and his health is certainly a question mark heading into this season. I mean, he's been dealing with a groin injury all summer and really hasn't been able to practice, which is kind of troublesome when many of us are hoping that he's going to be NHL ready this season. What are your thoughts here on Jett Luchanko, his health, and what our expectations should actually be with him as we head into this season?
Yeah, like if he was healthy, I think the expectation would be make the NHL and then we'll go from there. Like remember when Shaka Touré made the team and kind of like in a bottom six role, you were able to see some of the offense a little bit, but this is your role. Figure out that, like, use your strong detail work that you're able to do in juniors and why you were drafted and everything like that, and then we can see how the offense grows from there. That was going to be the expectation for me. if he was healthy, but now this groin injury and this kind of nagging throughout the whole summer, especially, and how has he been able to train? Has his off-season training been affected, and how long has he been able to get on the ice for a decent amount? And he's expected to be healthy at training camp, at least. Like, he was held out of rookie camp, the first rookie game, the first rookie practice, he wasn't on the ice, and it was kind of a surprise. And then it was just announced that for precautionary reasons, he'll be out of rookie camp. They expect him to be back on the ice at training camp this week. So we'll see how that goes, if he's healthy, if what he says about his health, what the Flyers say about his health, and everything like that going into the season. But it can't be a good thing if it's been nagging the entire summer for him. And I think, going with that context, the expectation has been lowered slightly. I wouldn't say it's lowered to he should probably go back to the OHL. I think maybe it'd be.
That's what I was wondering, to be honest.
Yeah,
I was wondering if that's the decision that's going to need to be made.
Yeah, like it's hard, because you could always maybe even do a conditioning loan down to the AHL and see how that goes, if his injury goes into the season much longer, or if we find out he's healthy this week and totally fine, and we don't see an issue on the ice, then it'll probably go away, that concern. So ultimately, I think it's just another storyline, another thing to keep an eye on at Flyers training camp, but it will be certainly something that could kind of dwindle down in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Well, look, as we are, heading into this preseason with this Flyers regular season, it seems like it's going to be right around the corner. There's a lot of storylines to follow with this team, and a lot of interesting storylines, whether it's from the offensive perspective with talent on this team, whether it's defensive talent as well, and just how this young core is going to end up growing together, how the culture is going to continue to manifest itself in Philly. So, Thomas, I'm wondering, like, what's the biggest thing that you're going to be looking at during this upcoming Flyers preseason that'll help propel, things into the regular season? What are your thoughts here?
Well, there's been a lot of changes, of course, to this team, and then off ice and on ice. So I think the biggest thing I'll be looking out for is Rick Tocchet's tendencies to either coach in how he runs his practices, but then also how he deals with his lines. Because as we kind of got to know John Tortorella, we saw, okay, he's not afraid to like give Noah Cates a big role, and see like those defensive forwards get him playing top 6 minutes and in certain situations. And it's going to be really interesting to see if Tocchet thinks the same way, or if he's willing to just like throw a young player up with Konechny and Couturier or something like that. Like, give Alex Bump immediately, just like see how he goes, and then we'll see from there. Because I remember his time in Vancouver, a player that he started out not really playing a whole lot was Connor Garland, a small, diminutive winger. And then as he saw more and more of him, I was working hard, he worked his way up. So it'll be interesting to see how he does right away with this impression of the roster, and how it kind of grows from there, and even grows in training camp. Because after a couple practices, I'm sure he could see, oh, this guy works my style, and then I'll give him an opportunity.
Yeah, and he's a player's coach. I mean, and that's an ongoing theme, and sometimes that phrase tends to get a little overused, I think, at times in the sports world. But a different type of coach that we've been used to seeing, especially when it comes to John Tortorella and Rick Tocchet. I think we're going to be seeing some night and day type of leadership when it comes from the coaching position. For sure. So, all right, buddy, to close us out here, we love always talking about under the radar storylines here at the PST podcast show, whether it's with the Flyers, Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Union, whoever. I'm wondering, what's one of the biggest under the radar storylines that we should be keeping our eyes on here during the preseason? What are your thoughts here?
I don't know if it's under the radar, but it's something that we haven't mentioned. And of course, like, it's kind of the elephant in the room with all this is Trevor Zegras. Like, it's ultimately like it's someone that could really change the outcome of this team. And like, it could either be going from he's a good middle six winger, and like you could always use those, but we have a lot of those. So how is he going to fit on the Flyers' future? And he's getting older, he needs a new contract, kind of that in the back of your head. Or you could be, oh, he's like an answer for first line center that we've been looking for the last decade. Like it's this variable of like, it's this variable of like, you're kind of these outcomes that I'm not going to say it's going to happen all in training camp, but it'd be like, oh, like Talkett trusts him to be a center, and that's a big enough deal going into the season that could really change like the future of this entire organization.
It's going to be interesting to watch for sure. Folks, Flyer season is right around the corner, and you're going to want to make sure you head on over to BroadStreetHockey.com to check out everything they have. Fantastic content, great podcasts as well with our friends over there. Again, folks, Thomas Williams from BroadStreetHockey.com. Buddy, it was great talking to you. Seriously, I would love to have you on the show again at some point down the road to dive into some Flyers talk. Come back and join us, my friend.
Definitely. Thank you, Jeff.